Well, hello there. Today we're going to talk about one of the most interesting topics in mathematics, usually covered in an introductory statistics course. And it's called Simpson's paradox. Simpson's paradox arises in many different stories. And it's actually a very interesting phenomena. We're going to present it, talk about it, and I want you to think about how you would explain it. The first story we're going to talk about is a cookie survey. So you're working at a bakery, and you're going to bake a couple of cookies. And you're going to test them on your customers. Fair enough, right? The first one is a ginger cookie, and the second one is a sugar cookie. And so what you're going to do is you're going to ask people as they walk in the store, which one do you like better? And we're going to set up a little two-way table that we talked about in our last video. Now, you're going to ask them to identify as male or female. And for this story, they're only going to choose male or female. And so we're going to ask them to choose one of those. And this is just for our statistical survey. Even if they don't identify as male or female, we're going to ask them just to choose one for this game. Okay. So here we go. And here's what happens. Of the males, or the people who identify as men, 12 out of 37 like the ginger. Okay. Of the people who identify as men, 45 out of 90 liked the sugar cookie. And maybe you tested these on separate days, you know. Of the people who identified as women, 50 out of 63 liked the ginger. And of the people who identified as men, 9 out of 10 liked the sugar cookie. So there weren't a ton of men coming in that day. That's a hint. Okay, so let's do these percentages. 32.4%. 50%, 90%, and 80.6%. Now, I just want you to stare at those numbers for a little while. Because you've got to present this now to management. Right? You're going to present this to management. So you can write that down or just stare at it, and eventually let's see what you notice. Maybe let's add a box down here for total. So this total would be what? 62 out of 100 people. Or 62%. And this would be 54 out of 100 people, or 54%. Now we're staring. Do you notice anything going on here? And that's a rhetorical question. I want you to think about that. Eventually, if you're sitting, let's say you're sitting in the boardroom, somebody presents this data, you say, wait a minute. For the men, sugar cookie wins. For the women, sugar cookie wins. But overall, ginger cookie wins. And this, my friends, is Simpson's paradox. What happens is, when the data is combined, we get a different result than we do in each frequency distribution, don't we? This is Simpson's paradox. Something strange is going on here. We're just gonna keep looking at that for a minute. What's happening here? Well, it's something called a lurking variable. There's another variable going on here, right? And that it really ends up being here, right? Just a small number of men came through. That's one of them. Also, men really like the sugar cookies, the ones that did come through. And what else? What do you notice about the number of men and number of women? Women, 73, men, 127. Lurking variables. But this is an example of Simpson's paradox. Let's take another one whose results are a little more dangerous. You're going to do a drug test, okay? And a drug promising to reduce the risk of heart attack was tested on 2 groups, okay? So this is how drug tests work, by the way. You have what's called a control group. In the control group, you basically give them a sugar pill, right? And then you have your treatment group. And the treatment group is given whatever drug you're using. Because what you want to see is, does your drug work, right? And again, we're going to ask people to identify as male or female. And let's see if we can identify Simpson's paradox. Okay, in the control group, 12 out of 40 of the men had a heart attack. That's about 30%. For the men, 8 out of 20 in the treatment group had a heart attack. That's 40%. For the female group, 1 out of 20 had a heart attack. That's 5%. And then in the treatment group, 3 out of 40, or about 7.5%, had heart attacks. Now, here's what happens. 12 and 1 is 13. 13 out of 60 for your totals, right? So 13 out of 60 is about 21 2/3%. And then over here, we had what, 11 out of 60. Uh-oh, I think you can see where this is going, don't you? 18.3%. So, do we identify Simpson's paradox here? What would you say? For the males, the treatment group had more higher percentage of heart attacks. For the females, the treatment group had a higher percentage of heart attacks. But the totals, the control group had a higher percentage of heart attacks. Okay, so this is the heart medicine. And these were attacks. Yeah, so I want you just to kind of think about that. And this is what we're talking about when we talk about Simpson's paradox. This discrepancy. Now, the question for you, and the one thing I want you to think about, is can you explain this? And the next time we meet, we're going to talk about that. So I want you to write these numbers down right now, or take a screenshot or a picture with your camera, because your job is going to be to explain this seemingly contradictory result. Could we even say a paradox?